Work on a super yacht, move up through the ranks, and maximize your potential.
Hello and welcome back to my very first question and answer video. As you can see, it's a beautiful evening behind me. Bit of swell, lines are creaking a bit, so please excuse that noise. And for some bizarre reason, I've chosen to film this video sitting on the steps up to the bridge deck forward. Now before today, I didn't actually have enough questions in the comments to make this video. However, this evening I got this huge comment from Peter, which pretty much had all the questions in one. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to write your questions down in the comments. As I've said before, this channel is all about you guys, and while I'll do my best to put things on here that I think you might like, it's even better if you let me know exactly what you want to see. Now I'll preface this by saying that I can only answer these questions based on my experience. I have typically worked on large motor yachts, over 60 metres, but below 100 metres, both private and charter. If you're working on smaller yachts or sailor yachts, you might have a different experience, but this should at least give you some background information. That being said, let's get into the questions. How long is the average working day whilst on charter and off charter? When it comes to yachts, we typically talk about working hours in relation to resting hours. That is to say, the amount of time you have off rather than the amount of time you are on. Regulations allow for a minimum of 10 hours rest in any 24-hour period, and a minimum of 77 hours rest in any 7-day period. To put that into numbers that you might actually understand, that means a 90-hour work week. Therefore, when you have guests on the boat, you can expect to be rotated in to work approximately 12 hours a day. That way, there's still an extra 2 hours that you can be asked to work if necessary. When you don't have guests on board, or you're not preparing for guests to come on board, you can expect a more typical work day, like 8 till 5. All hours of rest must be recorded, and if you've worked more than you should be given time off in lieu. Do you get weekends off? When you've got guests on board, expect that to be a big fat no. It'll be 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day, go, go, go. However, when you haven't got guests on board, yes, you can expect to have weekends off, so long as you aren't on watch or on duty. What is the schedule for the year? Well, how long's a piece of string really? Because all yachts are different. You might do just the Mediterranean season, or the Mediterranean and the Caribbean season. You might be private, you might be charter, you might be a busy charter boat, or you might be a charter boat that is for charter but doesn't actually really get any charters. It all depends. Do you get a month off each year as vacation? Well, again, this depends. On some boats, you will have some form of a rotation. So, I once had a 5 on, 1 off, which meant I basically had 2 months off per year, which was great. It was planned, I knew when those months were coming. The only downside was I couldn't take holiday outside of those planned months. So, if my months off were supposed to be January and then again in July, but I had a friend's wedding in June, I probably wouldn't be able to go. On other boats, it might be more like what you're used to in a land-based job, where you accrue days off in holiday for each month worked. So for each month that you work, you might earn 3 days of holiday. This would of course amount to 36 days off per year, but they're typically not to be taken whenever you want. They must be taken in accordance with the schedule of the yacht. So in July or August, busy Mediterranean summer, don't expect to be able to take any time off then. Free time whilst on charter. Where can you go and what can you do? Well, again, depends the boat. On some boats, when you've got guests on, when you're on charter, there won't be any free time. I worked for an owner that had 7 children, 5 of them old enough to be running around all of the time. With only 3 of us on deck, we had our hands full all day, every day. But on other boats, where they're a bit quieter, or where the owners typically live aboard most of the time, they try to get you off every so often, because 3-4 months with the owner on board and you don't get a single day off the boat, that's just way too much. I remember on one boat, we went up to St. Petersburg and the owners were really keen that we got off and saw the Winter Palace. So they threw on a minibus and we went off in groups to do a tour of the Winter Palace while the owners were still on the boat. On another yacht, the owners were pretty much liveaboard, so every so often they would buddy us up, me with the stewardess for example, and they would send us off the day and we could choose to do what we wanted. They would take us to the nearest dock and they would say, come back at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, or give us a call when you're back and we'll come pick you up. How frequently do you charter and how many destinations do you get to see? Again, it depends the yacht. Some charter boats are really, really busy. In the Mediterranean, they might be booked for a full 12 weeks straight, plus some owners' trips thrown in for good measure. In this time, they might cover the whole Mediterranean, from west to east. Then, when they're done, into a busy shipyard period, and then straight across the Atlantic for a full Caribbean season, where they might see vast majority of the Caribbean islands. Equally, you might be on a yacht that doesn't get used very often, and when it does, doesn't go very far. I was getting really quite uncomfortable there, so time for a change of scene. Does a deckhand wash throughout the night or daytime only? When you've got guests on board, typically it happens at night. Don't be surprised if you find yourself standing with a hose at 3 o'clock in the morning, rinsing salt off the boat and wondering what exactly you're doing. Being on watch on your own at night can get really quite lonely and sometimes leave you feeling really quite depressed. But don't worry, it is all worth it. What else is there to do other than washing? This is a question I get not just from people who wish to come into the industry, but also people in general. What exactly do you do on a boat? It's a boat, there's so much to do all of the time. You might be painting, varnishing, doing some rope work, some splicing, maybe the tender needs detailing, maybe the beach club needs completely emptying, all of the water toys brought out, everything cleaned, tidied and put back neatly. The list goes on and on and on. There will always be something to do, even if it's not washing. Does a deckhand normally work without shoes because of water activities? Can you wear shoes inside the crew quarters? Well, typically, I prefer to be wearing shoes all of the time. You will often find yourself lifting heavy items, launching tenders, launching jet skis, mooring, anchoring. All these things you really do need shoes on in case something falls on your foot. It also looks far more professional as part of a uniform. Of course, if you're going out on the jet skis with guests, or you're in the tender towing them, you're in the water with them, on the inflatables, then your shoes will come off. But typically, I'm always in shoes. Like the rest of the boat, you'll want to keep your shoes clean, and if you do, yes, typically you can wear them in the crew quarters. Are watches and other jewellery, such as bracelets, allowed? Yes, typically they are allowed. If you start coming in with piercings everywhere, then no, that's probably not going to be on. But a simple watch, a bracelet, typically you won't have any issues with that. How does bad weather affect the working day? If it rains, what else is there to do? Well, I guess this ties back in with the original question of what else is there to do other than washing. Just because you can't be outside in the pouring rain doesn't mean you can't be inside in the beach club or in the forepeak or in one of the passageways that's covered, cleaning out a fire locker, for example. There'll be plenty and plenty of other things to do. What are the minimum training requirements to be hired as a deckhand? Well, typically it all starts with the STCW courses. There's 5 of them now. Elementary first aid, personal safety and social responsibility, fire prevention and firefighting, personal survival techniques, and proficiency in security awareness. These are the 5 basic courses, and they're typically wrapped up in one package. In addition, you'll need the ENG1 Seafarer's Medical Certificate, and as a deckhand, you're also going to want to get your powerboat level 2. Does a deckhand interact with guests as much as stewards or stewardesses? Well, it depends how the guests use the boat. Typically, the stewards and stewardesses will see more of the guests, of course, they're serving them for breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then throughout the day. But if your guests are very heavy on water sports, you'll be spending a lot of time with them. Is it fairly easy to grow in your career? Well, of course, I'm going to tell you to check out my video on progressing your super yacht career out on deck. It's easy in that there is a recognized path. There are steps or hoops that you must jump through, tick the boxes, and you can move to the next step. But it's not easy in the sense that there's a lot of work that needs to go in to ticking those boxes. After deckhand, what's the next level, and how does this differ in terms of work difficulty and responsibility? Well, dependent on the size of yacht, next up from a deckhand might be a lead deckhand, and then after that, bosun. As a lead deckhand or bosun, you'll be expected to show the junior deckhands what they need to be doing to get the job done properly. It's when you step up to bosun that the difficulty and responsibility really pile on. I've often heard it said that the bosun is one of the most difficult jobs on board. The reason being that you're sandwiched between the officers and the deckhands. The officers, pressure's coming down on you to get certain things done, and then the deckhands, they might not want to do what you're asking of. It can be a real difficult juggling act to appease both parties, and this is where leadership skills really come in. You'll need to know the deck department inside and out and backwards. You'll need to be able to get the boat set up, manage all of the deckhands, manage their time, their jobs, and just generally make sure that the deck is running smoothly. You'll report typically directly to the chief officer, and the better you are and the more easy you make their life, the better things will be for you. Why is there a trend of people working for a few years, then leaving, as opposed to growing in rank? Is it really that demanding work? It sounds like it is a job that's not for the faint-hearted. Well, the work itself is not necessarily that demanding. There are plenty of land-based jobs where you have to work really, really hard and for really, really long hours. The difference on a yacht is that you're typically away from home and you're living and working in the same space. So, to compare this to a land-based job in an office, say, it would be like working in the office all day and then at the end of the day, staying in that same office, eating, sleeping, and then getting up to do it all again the next day. Needless to say, this can get pretty tiresome. You're always at work, always on call pretty much, and you're away from friends and family. So it seems like a good job at first, but in the end, a lot of people decide that it's just not for them, and it doesn't fit in with the sort of lifestyle that they really want to lead. What is the average minimum start-out wage, and is it heavily taxable, or do you know if there is a way to qualify for a seafarer's tax exemption? Well, as a junior member of deck crew, or indeed a junior stewardess, you can typically expect to be starting out on approximately 2,500 euros per month. That was what it was when I started 9 years ago, and it really hasn't changed all that much since. Of course, in reality, some may pay a little bit more, some a little bit less. With regard to taxes, that depends on where you're from. In the UK, we are very lucky to have something called Seafarers' Earnings Deductions, which basically means that you declare all of the money that you earn, but you are not liable to pay tax on it. I can talk at great length about this, and I will do in another video. But needless to say, it's a real great deal if you're from the UK and you're working on a yacht. I know that other nationalities, such as Australians, don't get the same benefits. How cramped are the crew quarters and your cabin? How many people do you have to share with on average? And is there a designated washroom for staff? This all depends on the size of boat. Regardless of size of boat, cabins typically just consist of a bunk for 2 people, wardrobe space, a desk if you're lucky, and a bathroom with wash basin, toilet and shower. As the yachts get bigger, so do your cabins, but you'll typically still only find these components within them. I have been on yachts where they get 3 members of crew into one cabin, but typically it'll just be 2. As for the rest of the crew quarters, bigger boats will have much bigger crew messes. They might also have a separate crew lounge, they might have a crew gym, and they also might have a day head, that is, a toilet outside of the cabins reserved for the crew. You will also typically have a crew area out on deck, and it's oftentimes the foredeck. So it doesn't matter, even when you've got guests on board, crew can still come up to the foredeck and they can chill out, have a chat, watch the sun go down, or come up and get ready to go to bed or for the next shift. Food arrangements. How many meals a day are provided? Well, typically breakfast isn't served, but you'll have plenty of cereal, bread, toaster, everything you could want for breakfast will be there in the fridges and the cupboards, but you'll have to pull it out and get yourself set up. When it comes to lunch and dinner, these are normally cooked for you and served at lunchtime and at dinner time. Any leftovers will normally go into boxes and go into the fridge, and if you're peckish, you can always go to the fridge and grab any of the leftovers. Trust me, the chef will be really happy if you finish off all of that food, because it gives them more space in the fridge and they don't typically like wasting things. Finding a job on a yacht. Is it best to go dock walking, or can you suggest a better approach? Any other recruitment suggestions? Yes, heading to one of the major yachting centres, such as Antibes in France, or Fort Lauderdale in the States, or Palma off Spain, and basing yourself there is a great way to start. With so many crew in these areas, why would a yacht bother flying in a junior crew member from elsewhere? Dock walking is an excellent place to start. It can often be a little bit soul destroying, going from one boat to the next boat to the next boat, asking, have you got any work? Might you have any opportunities coming up in the future? And always being told, no, no, no. But it's got to be done. If you don't do it, someone else will, and when that opportunity comes up, you won't be the one who gets it. In addition, you will of course need to sign up with all of the agencies and go in there, see them in person, let them know that you're there, let them get to know you so that when a job does come up, they have you in mind and they put you forward for it. Have I ever been to Malta, and if so, how good is the probability of dock walking there? Yes, I have been to Malta, spent about 4 or 5 weeks there about 3 years ago. It wouldn't be my first place of choice. If you're not successful there, it's always going to be a flight out to somewhere else to go and try and find a job. And finally, one question from long-time subscriber Caillou, who asks, is there an age limit for starting as a deckhand? It would be easy to say yes, a deckhand is a young man's game. However, if that's what you really want to do, you can make it happen, and I wouldn't stop you from going for it. I would, however, just remind you that if you've been used to a little bit more responsibility in a shore-based position, if you come in as a junior deckhand, you're going to have someone much younger than you telling you to do sometimes fairly menial tasks. And that brings me to the end of the questions, and it looks like the end of the day. Peter and Caillou, thank you so much for getting in touch and asking these questions. I really hope that my answers have benefited you and indeed anyone who watches this video. As I've said before, this channel is all about you guys. So please, 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 if there's anything you want to know, drop it down in the comments and I'll do my best to give you a good answer. If I can't answer the question, I'll let you know that too. With any luck, I'll have enough questions to do another one of these next week. Until then, please do check out the rest of the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next time.